away from the diaphragm, the liver. So it's detached, but it's still hanging on by some threads. Amalei, he responds to him, Dildazein yedamao. I don't understand what your problem is. Ilamandamar makamara. If you say that the liver needs to be connected to the gall, you have it there. Ilamandar makam shichaya. If you say that it needs to be a kazayas next to the where it lives, which is either the kidneys or the diaphragm, but it doesn't matter. Ha'ika. But the liver's still there also. So he doesn't understand this question. Okay.
So basically telling him it's okay.
Yeah, it's kosher. And now we start a new piece. And just the introduction should just be like this, that the lungs, we get into the lungs, it takes a whole discussion. This is the big deal in Hilchos Treifus, so the lungs. The lungs have lobes. Now, when the animal is hanging by its feet, facing the front facing the sheichet, so he would look at it, he would have 3 lobes on his right and 2 lobes on the left, plus there's also the main part of the lung. That's what's it called? Is there a word for the main part? The lower, it's called the
outer membrane, inner
You mean
membrane.
the bronchi?
No, the big part of the lungs, besides for the branches that branch out on.
Must be a picture.
Okay. Now,
The lining that covers
no.
it?
Lobes.
Now, the lobes of the lungs
Yeah.
are not just 2 big, the right and left side,
Right.
but there's the lobes. It branches out, like this.
This is
46B.
big,
Yeah. So those, you have the 2 on the bottom. Those are called umais.
and then there's little ones
Okay.
coming out, sticking
The 2 big lobes on the bottom are called the uma, like as if like mother.
Nation.
Caudal lobe.
No, with a aleph. So
Uma.
why is it called uma?
It's like a mother.
Maybe because there's some nutrients that the other parts get from it. Then these are called unais. Those lobes are called unais. They need to be in order. Now, they need to be in the right place and all of that. Now, what we're going to learn is we're going to learn about adhesions from one to the other. We're going to learn about the membrane that surrounds it. That's called the krum that surrounds it. There's the little lobe in the middle, what we'll learn about also. It's called the rose, the thin rose, Nunisa Devar, that we'll learn about. Okay, so it starts off with Hareya Shenikva, the lungs that have a hole in it. Rav Shmuel v'Ravasi, the Amri, Rav and Shmuel and Ravasi that say, Karma Ilah. When it says that if there's a hole, it's in the lungs, it's referring to the outer membrane of the lungs. The way it's looking at it is that there's an outer membrane and an inner membrane. Apparently, there isn't really an inner membrane. Apparently, it's the actual lung itself that appears to be like a membrane because of the way it's held together. But there is an outer membrane. Va'amrila karmatata, and some say the puncture needs to be in the bottom one. Now, Taisvus points out that obviously it's with the top one as well. When in the second opinion it says that the puncture needs to be in the inner membrane, it means inner and outer. It doesn't just mean inner, as we're going to see. Amar Rabbi Yosef bar Minyumi. Rabbi Yosef bar Minyumi says, Amar Rab Nachman. He says in the name of Rab Nachman. Rab Nachman is a student of Shmuel here on the chart. So, like, 2nd generation Babylonian. V'simanach, the way to remember this is kituna devar de mancha beireya, a red robe of a rose, like a red rose robe that the lung is held inside.
Here they say the rose-colored tunic in
Good.
which the lung lies. Tunic, it's a wearable towel.
This is an advertisement. What they do in the old movies. I am
Thousands of
smoking
years ago,
marijuana.
they saw it this morning.
Subliminal advertising.
So, apparently, Rav Nachman is accepting the second view because the inner membrane is red. The inner part is red, and that's what he's saying. You want to remember this. He's ignoring the first opinion here. So just Pshita. It's obvious that if the outer one is punctured but not the inner one, tata megan, then the inner one will protect. We're going like the second version here, that the inner one is the main one. The outer one, kiderabba, like Rabbi says. Some say on the side it says that it's Rabba. The Amar Rabba or the Amar Rabba, Hai Reya de Iglid, this lung that's been peeled, that the skin has come off it, Ka'ahina Sumka, it looks like a red date. Ksheira, it's still kosher. Inkiv Tatav Inkiv Ilah. Next case. Let's say the membrane on the outside is there, but there's a hole in the inside. Well, maybe it swallowed
Naturally.
something that.
What's
He's asking how is it possible? He's
No.
assuming that it gets punctured from the outside,
Then you get
but actually
punctured.
it could be because it inhaled something that somehow got
Naturally.
deeper and deeper, or some.
Yeah.
So Elah Megan, the outer membrane will protect. Elah Megan, or will it not protect? This is a question. So the Gemara says, Pligi bar Ravacha Ravina. So machlekes between Ravacha and Ravina. Chad Amar Elah Megan. One of them says that it doesn't protect. Maybe it's supposed to be Eina Megan. That it doesn't protect. V'chad Amar Megan, and one says that it does protect. V'hilchas Megan, and the halach is that it is Megan, and as we're going to say, K'd Rabbi Yosef. Taisus points out, we anyways paskin like Ravina. If there's machlekes Ravach and Ravina. So we didn't really need to say this, but we wanted to quote Rabbi Yosef, as we're going to do. So we did this. Now, why is that
What's
interesting?
the natural color of
The inside is red.
in the smoker or non-smoker?
The inside is reddish, and the outside would probably dull the color a little bit.
It says it's pale,
Pink.
the outer, because it doesn't
Right.
have blood vessels.
Right, but when you would look through, it would look like a dull pinkish probably. Remember when we were learning shchita, so they brought us lungs. They put on the table all different lungs, so we had to decide which one was which. But they blew it up, and it was like this pinkish color was coming out of it. They said, "Oh, that's because it's mixed with water. It was coming different. When you put water in it, it like changes colors a little bit." So
Well, basically, the lung has blood going through it, and then the thin membranes of the sacs, air is on the other side. So it's blood in there, blood in there. So I mean, so the pink is just coming from the color of the blood, but half of the space is ears. So maybe that's why it looks more pink.
So Tosfos over here says that we would anyways go like Ravina. The reason why this is so interesting is because our Gemara says Chad Amar. One says that it's not protected by the outer membrane, and the other one says that it is protected by the outer, but it didn't tell us who held what. And Tosfos is worried. Why does the Gemara need to tell us that the halachas that it's protected? We would anyways go like Ravina, but the Gemara didn't say who held what. It must be that Tosfos assumes that when it says Chad Amar and Chad Amar, it's in
it
the
goes
names.
according to the list.
It goes into the sequence.
So
It's very interesting.
Ravach was
That's
also no
Reuven
Megan.
Margali. I'm sorry?
Ravina is- So the first one is Ravach.
Ravach.
The Racha, the second one was Ravina, and Tosfos.
Generally in Gemara it doesn't go like that. When it says Chad
Many
Amar,
times
it
the
could
Gemara-
be anyway.
Many times the Gemara says, "Let's prove it that this is the one that says that's the one that says that," and they go, "It's unclear."
So it's not necessarily in order.
Reb Reuven Margalius in his Sefer Shem Eilam, he tries to go through all the places where it says Chad Amar and determine which one holds what. Yeah, Okay. Kid Rabbi Yosef, as Rabbi Yosef says, that it's going to be protected by the outer one. The Amar Rabbi Yosef, Hayreya da Avsha. If there's a lung that whistles, you blow into it and you hear a sound. So Iyadinan Hecha Avsha, if you know where it is, where the whistling is coming from, Mesvinan ala Gadfa, you put on it a feather, a reika, or some spit, a gila, or stone. It's like checking a tire. If it's like bubbles up or if it flutters, then it's a treifa. There's a hole. Eily, but if not, then it's ksheira. So how are you hearing the sound? Because it's whistling inside. It's just not getting out. So Eily adinan hechavsha. But if you don't know where it is, maisinan matichlata demaya pshuri. You take a basin of lukewarm water, masvina la begave, and you put the lung in it. Bechamimila, you can't use warm water, the kvitzi, because the warm water will cause the skin of the lungs to expand, and that way you'll close the hole.
Yeah, we'll soften it all up.
And then it will expand.
It says it'll shrivel. It'll come together.
Yeah, but that happens because it will expand. That will close the, right? Oh no, what does it mean it will shrivel? That means because it will shrink, so then it closes it?
Right.
No, I was assuming that the warmth would make it expand. When things are warm, it's supposed to get larger, so that would expand it. I don't know. Right? It's not... Bekriri light, you can't put it in cold water, the mitarshi, because it will make it more brittle, and then it will just like pop, because it will be brittle. Al misfin bipshur, you put it in lukewarm water, and then you blow it up. If it, in the lukewarm water, it bubbles, then it's treifa, be like sheira. If not, then it's kosher. Okay, so we have a ruling from Rabbi Yosef about a whistling lung, that the outer membrane will protect it, and it will be considered that it can live. Tata and kiv. What's going on over here? The lower one was, the inner one was had a hole. Ilah and kiv. The outer one doesn't have a hole. By davsha zika de beni benihu. And this that it's whistling, it's because of the air that's going in between. Okay. Okay, we go back to what we said before now. Gufa. Gufa, we said, was a statement of Amirayim that we're going to re-examine. So we said before, here it says Amarava. Before we had Rabba, so that's why the Girsa was changed to Rava. We see why they changed it. Amarava, Hayreya de Iglet Kahina Sumka Kshera. Rava says this lung that was peeled like a red date, the outer part was, so it looks very red, still kosher. Because the inner, we said the inner membrane protects. V'amar Rava, Rava says, Reya Shedima Miktsasa Kshera Kula Treifa. He says, a lung that turned red, like extra red. So then, if it's only partially, then it's kosher. However, if it's entirely red, then it's treif. Amalei Ravina LeRava. Ravina says, Rava, Miktsasa my taima. What's the reason why you said it's kosher if it's only partially? The Hadrabari, because it will heal itself. So Kulanami Hadrabari. If it's entirely red, it will also heal itself. Milei Tanya, was it not taught in a brisa? We're switching topics here. B'shar shkatim or ramasim ad shetzim dam. Talking about if someone bruises an animal or a creature on Shabbos, so if the blood comes out, so then he violates the laws of Shabbos. You're not allowed to let blood on Shabbos. It's under the category of slaughtering, of letting blood. You can't do that on Shabbos. So there's a difference between the Shemaina Shratzim and the 8 creatures that are Tameh, because their skin is different. The skin of the 8 of these 8 Shratzim have a thicker skin. And over there, even if the blood doesn't come out by the Shemaina Shratzim, it's still considered like letting blood, because the blood goes in between it leaves the flesh and goes under the skin. However, by other creatures, it's only considered letting blood if this blood came out. So it says, was it not taught in a brisa regarding Shabbos that by the other creatures the blood needs to come out? And so here also, if the fact that it turned red, okay, so it's like like black and blue. Like it's turned red, like some bruise, but that's not considered like a real injury, because we find by those other creatures that it's not an injury unless the blood comes out. And so we're going to compare the lungs to the other creatures. If you're going to tell me that we need to compare it to the Shemaina Shratzim, like who told you to compare? You saw these two types of creatures here. One that the blood needs to come out, one that the blood doesn't need to come out. You're comparing it to the blood needs to come out, and therefore you're saying, oh, the blood didn't come out, so it's kosher. Maybe you compare it to the Shemaina Shratzim. The Tanya was taught, Nitzer Hadam, if the blood collects in one area, Afal Pish Layatza, even though it didn't exit the body, it's held underneath the skin, but it looks all red there, it's still considered a prohibition of Shabbos. Ihachi, if that's the case, you're going to compare it to that. Afilu Miktasanami. Then even if you're going to consider this an injury, then even if it's only partially injured, it should be treif. Why did we say that it's? Why does Rabbi say that partially red is okay, entirely red is no good? Ela loishna, rather there's no difference. Now that's a very ambiguous statement. Ela loishna, rather there's no difference. What does he mean? There's no difference. No difference that it's always treif, or that it's always kosher. Well, whenever you can read anything two ways, you're going to have a machlekes. So, Leishna, Taisvus brings, Ben Chananel, that says, Leishna, there's no difference, and it's always treifa. And, however, he brings Rashi, that says, Leishna, there is no difference, and it's always kosher. And he brings others that agree to Rashi, and etc. Okay. Talking about the red lung.
He said it before. He said it's going to get healed again. So obviously it's kosher.
That was all based on. Why do you say that it's partially kosher? But if it's only partially red, is because it's going to heal. Right. So then it should heal also there. But then he goes back and he says.
Yeah, but he could have said the opening statement. He could have said it the other way.
Oh, that's interesting. So that's a proof to Rashi. Very good.
Thank you for coming.
Very good.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you were mentioned before because the Gemara said Eily.
So I said Eily.
So is it so?
I'm famous now.
No, but a Gemara that's going to have Eily in it, we're going to think about it. V'amar Rava says, Reya sheyavsha miktsasa treifa. If it partially dried up, part of the lungs dried up, so it's treifa. How much is dry? Bekama. Rashi's gears is slightly different, but Rashi's gears, maybe not.
Rabbi, which shratzim are we talking about?
Remember there were these 8 creeping creatures that if they die, they give off an impurity. Usually creatures that die don't give off impurity.
Are these reptiles? I mean,
yeah, I think so.
So they're cold-blooded.
Yeah.
So they're different, I mean,
Right.
physically.
Right. So why would these be compared to the lungs? Well, we were just talking about an injury, and we said there's these reptiles, and then there's the other ones, and we thought maybe we'll compare the lungs to the other ones, and then we said that's why it's kosher. We said, well, maybe compare them to the 8 reptiles that are different. So then we concluded rather there's no difference. So, and that's whether it's a little bit red or totally red, there's no difference in the lungs. So how dry should it be to be treif? Amar Rav Papi mishmei de Rava. Rav Papi says in the name of Rava, Kadei shetifrach b'tzipayrin, so that it should crumble with the fingernail. Come on, who does that go like? Rabbi Yossi ben Meshulam. It goes like Rabbi Yossi ben Meshulam. I don't have him on the chart. The Tanya was taught in the Braisa. Ezu yevesha, what's considered dry? Shimti nakev, that if it would be punctured, that if it's punctured and no blood comes out, that's considered dry. That's the first opinion. What's considered dry? if it crumbles with the fingernail. The Gemara says, "Afilu temer rabbanan." See, this discussion here was not specifically referring to. It wasn't referring to a lung. This was referring to a mum on a firstborn animal. Now, firstborn animal is supposed to be a sacrifice. Unless it has a mum, then it's given to the Kohen. So here we're talking about if the ear of the animal was dry, so that's considered a mum. It dried up somehow, maybe like from frostbite or something. It dried, and so what was considered dry? So it said, well, if you put a needle in it and no blood comes out, then that's considered dry. Rabbi ben Menachem said that if you scratch it and it crumbles, that's considered dry. We said that that doesn't mean that's dry by a lung just because it's dry by an ear. Afilu temer rabbanan. We can even say that the rabbanan would say over here that it needs to be more dry than by the ear. Why? Gabi oizen b'char the kashalat bezika hajabari. By the ear of the firstborn animal, over there it needed to be dry, that you would puncture it and no blood would come out. It's because it's not going to heal. So it needs to be. So even if it's a little bit dry, that there's no blood coming out, that's already considered dry. It's finished. There's no blood going through. But by the lungs, where it's not exposed to the ear, and it's in that like warm environment, hadabari, it could heal there easier, and therefore, just dried enough that it's going to be that there's no blood that would come out through a puncture. That doesn't mean that by the lungs that would be not able to heal. It could heal by the lungs. Like that, it would need to be even more dry, that it would be brittle and crack with the fingernail. Why in the mouth does things heal so fast? Is it because of the moisture?
A lot of blood supply.
Uh-huh.
Or the tongue is.
Uh-huh. Why when they get a cut, you put on like an ointment and you cover it? Is it because it heals faster when it's moist? Or does the ointment...
Mothers like to do that.
Oh, we don't do that?
Yeah, wash it, count.
Just leave it? Will it heal the same if it's not moist? And
It'll heal faster.
Probably faster. It'll
It's
make
exposed to the air.
it'll
The
make
air-
a scab, and that's it.
Oh.
But then the mother has nothing to do.
Uh-huh.
So
The ointment protects it
put
from
a band-aid.
bacteria.
Bacteria.
So
She's
that's just
counting the
bacteria,
days.
nothing to do with healing.
No, the healing is faster if it's uncovered,
Uh-huh.
because the air heals it faster.
You must treat the parents, not just the
Uh-huh.
It's true.
Okay.
The art of medicine.
That's right. That's right.
If there's less bacteria, it heals quicker.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but you can do that with soap and water.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you can't do that constantly. So when you put the ointment,
For a child,
it protects it from bacteria.
see, for a child, they put on an ointment or a Band-Aid because the child's constantly in dirt.
Right.
But if an adult, you just let it go.
The
through
problem
air.
with the ointments is they tend to sensitize people like that neosporin.
Right.
They end up getting allergic to the neomycin, and then the next time, God forbid, they get an antibiotic of that family, they're allergic to it. So
It's not allergic, it's more that it doesn't have an effect.
no,
It
the
desensitizes.
allergic to it.
No, I thought it's desensitization.
Okay.
You get a super infection.
Rama Rava. Rava says,
Just blowing it, spit on it, do whatever you want. That's not a medical advice.
look at
Clean
that.
it, soap and water.
Just like when they change the board, in schools or whatever, the new board needs to come up with a chiddush. So they change the whole thing and everything. It's in medicine also, I'm sure.
By the way-
new doctor, he changes
By the
everything.
way, during this break for a moment,
There's never a board.
we had mentioned that there's little blood in the ear, right? And there's very low meat
Right.
in the ear. So the origin I learned from the delicacy of pig ears, which is a treif delicacy in South America. This is interesting, especially came from the Jews who escaped the Inquisition, went to South America, and were scared that they'd be recognized because they wouldn't be eating meat. As, oh, you might be a Jew, and they were worried that the Grand Inquisitor might come there. So they said, which piece of meat on the pig has the least amount of meat? And they said, the ears. So they took the ears, and then they burnt it as much as they could, so the mama should be
Wow.
low. Where
Where did you read this? That is so
I
interesting.
learned. I don't remember who
Now it's
I
a
learned.
delicacy?
So Wait, no. So they did it so that they wouldn't be over the avera of eating treif. Wouldn't be royas kelef, but it ended
Wow.
up as a delicacy
So
in
they're
the South
busting dogs,
America.
okay.
Amarava.
I
Very
don't remember
interesting.
where I learned that from.
Hi Reya, the kaima gildi. This lung that has scabs. Ukmi, or it has black spots. Chazusa.
Someone do it.
It has different colors. Kshera. That's okay. Amar Ameimar Mishmei de Rava. Ameimar says, in the name of Rava, Ameimar is down here, and Rava is here, so one generation off.
It's towards the end.
It's interesting because they put Ameimar as a son of Rami Bar Chama on here. See that? Is that interesting? They put him so you have the broken line. Now Ameimar says, Ein makifin babui. Makifin is an interesting term. Makifin means that you can't compare blisters. Now there's a problem. If you take out the lung and you see that there's a blister there, which doesn't make it treif, a blister on the lung. However, if the blister has a hole in it, then it's treif. So what you could do is like this. When did the hole come? Maybe the hole came afterwards. So what you can do is you can take another blister, put a hole in it, and see if the hole looks exactly like this hole. And that would be a comparison to show when the hole took place. He says, no, you can't do that with buoys. A buoy is a blister or a cyst or something like that. Okay. Va'amar Rava. Rava says, this is the real sugya of the lungs. Hani tarti uni desrichan lahadadi. These two lobes of the lung that are connected with a sircha. A sircha is an adhesion that connects the two, that grows. It's a growth that would grow. So, less lubadika.
Stop it.
It's like mucus.
It's a.
You gotta be silent.
It's probably it could be from a mucus that attaches it. It can't be checked. In other words, it can't be examined if there's actually a hole there. And in other words, it's treif automatically. That was only said if it's shaloi kesidron, if the adhesion goes from one lobe to another, but not in between the lobes themselves. In other words, let's say these are the lobes, all right? Let's say these fingers are the lobes. So a sircha, an adhesion that goes from this one to this one, top to the bottom, less lebedika. You can't examine that.
It's true.
Because it's different reasons, but possibly because it's going to break. Okay. However, if it's in between the two lobes, a sircha from here to here, that's not going to be a problem. Why? Because the middle one is not going to break it. There's not. There was a Yiddish expression to describe someone that's not normal. They would say
It's a bracha.
Nish bedari de une. He's not in the rows of the lungs. In other words, there was the normal position it was supposed to be, and then there was the abnormal position. He's not bedari de une. That was the expression. He's not in the mainstream. There's different explanations here. Let's just go through one thing here from Rashi. Rashi says that even though a scab is not considered a new skin, is not considered a protector, that if there would be a hole and a new skin grew, that doesn't protect, but if the new skin grew in between the lungs, in between the lobes of the lungs, it does protect. So a sircha means that there was a hole. The adhesion means that there was a hole and some mucus or some moisture was getting out and growing this new scab, this new adhesion. But that doesn't really protect unless it's going from one lobe to another. The other commentaries here don't say like that. They don't want to say that there's actually a hole already, and you're saying that it's permitted when it's in the right position. What they learn is that there was no hole there. It was somehow there's moisture, but there's no hole. What's our concern with the sircha is that there will be a hole because it's going to rip, and anything that's going to rip is considered like it's ripped, and that's why it's treif. So is it something that was being fixed, and is the fixing okay, or is it just something that's going to be broken? That's a different ways of looking at this.
Siman or siba.
I'm sorry?
Siman or siba. Siman is a siman that it
Will be for the future.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Siba
or
has
siba
happened
that
in
happened
the
in the
past.
past.
Usually, siman and siba is put differently. Usually, siman and siba means, is this the
cause
actual
Or
reason why it's treif? Is it sircha treif,
cause
or is it a sign that there's something wrong with it? Right. That's the. But over here, the question is, did it happen already, or Rashi mentions? He says he had a question. We only mentioned here that if the lobes are not there's a sircha from number 1 to number 3. However, if it's number 1 to number 2, it's kosher. He says, let's say it's from number 3 to the umma on the bottom. I should put it like a much bigger one, right? If it's so over there, he says this was a story that happened, and he asked his teacher Rabbi Yaakov bar Rabbi Yakar. Rabbi Yaakov said that it was permissible to eat. He said, however, that some forbid it. And he gave me his reason and their reasons. He says, those that forbid it, they say, look, what is a sircha? Sircha means there's a hole. Where do you find the heter? By a hole. You only find the heter between the unas. That's what it says here. His reason was that, what's the reason for the heter? Is because it seals it off and it's right. It's in the right position where it's not going to move. So he says the same thing should apply to the ummah. There should be no difference. Okay. But if it's kasidran, that's the way that it grows. Rava says hani trebui desmichila dadi. If there's two cysts that are right next to each other, lesle bedikusa, you can't examine them. Which means that it's this term you can't examine them means that it's treif. When we mentioned before a sircha that's next to each other, a sircha that goes from number 1 to number 3 is less lubedika. The commentaries say that means that if it goes from number 1 to number 2, you do have to examine it. It's not that it's kosher without an examination. But okay. But here, two cysts that are next to each other, they can't be examined.